I believe my role is obviously going to be as a representative of the people of District 4. The Caddo Commission is essentially the legislative arm of the state here locally, and there's the obvious things that they're over to look over, include the animal shelter, the district court, the juvenile detention center, parish parks, roads, bridges, those kind of things, the infrastructure of that. But ultimately also the legislative aspect of writing, repealing, creating the actual law writing part. So. Well, as a small business owner and a single dad, I am very proficient at managing a budget in general, and as far as I'm concerned, numbers are just numbers. Over the years, as I've been heavily involved in local government, both city and parish, I've kind of developed a unique skill as a serious budget hawk. So I think that being fiscally responsible is probably going to be one of my biggest strengths. Well, each of those I would probably need to see more details to really be able to hammer out anything concrete. But just shooting off the cuff here, based on things I do know, I think we could consider, certainly from the law enforcement aspect. I mean, I do think that Shreveport is in Caddo Parish, so there's certain areas where we can definitely have crossover. With the recent, trash debacle that started at the beginning of this year, I learned an awful lot about that, and it certainly seemed like privatization would have been a much better solution. I do feel that the city of Shreveport is not really equipped to handle the trash pickup, so maybe some kind of venture or a joint decision to go with somebody parish-wide and split costs towards privatization could be something we could look at. But obviously I would want to see hard factual data in any of those directions and be able to make the best decision at that time. Well, again, I'm a bit more conservative than most, so I think the role of the government is somewhat limited, or at least it should be. But I'm also pragmatic in that I know that, especially here today and in our city and our community, we have a lot of needs. We have rampant poverty, which probably plays into our high crime, and the fact that our tax base is moving further and further away. There's a lot going on. So I think that if we Right now, the big problem going on with the commission and the whole deal with the walkout is not wanting to discuss the issues at hand, the findings of that audit. Like we have to have some clear-cut criteria, something that's black and white that everybody can see, to know that there's trust amongst the community as well, that the government's doing what they're supposed to do. And it's not something about just friends of friends of friends getting this money and sham organizations that aren't actually giving us a return on our investment. So I would like to ensure that we line out a very specific set of criteria for exactly what the organization is, that we reviewed their mission statement, that we probably have at least one actual site visit a year, and see that whatever they're doing, that they say they're doing, they're actually doing, have access to their books, and be able to see that we have a true positive return on investment before we make any decisions to give away money to NGOs. I think the parish is in pretty good shape right now financially. I mean, they do have the money. I don't know that I would jump behind any new millages right now. or the ones that have already failed. I think the taxpayers speak first and foremost when it comes to that. And I mean, it's hard to vote down any tax increases in this area. So I think that really sets a tone, and I would rather stick with the taxpayers and find a way to better prioritize our budget and ensure that we're taking care of the vital needs and the things that the people want. I mean, that's ultimately my job, or the job that I'm applying for here, is to go out there and represent those people and do what I can to make sure that, you know, we spend our money the best we can on the things that the citizens want us to be spending money on. That's an interesting frame of the question. I am one of those doubters, because I've been studying that and following it quite a bit as far as 49. I'm not sure that the data of today necessarily represents that there's a very high return on investment there as well. I know for years I believed the same thing, because that's what we've always been told, you know, and that's what the studies always said. But you know, in the last 10 to 20 years, it seems that there's more data has shown that it's been better for the cities to keep the interstates and things going around the cities, and not having these major thoroughfares coming through the city, and having more like a business boulevard, things like that to run to make those connectors. I mean, technically I-49 is connected now, and just without seeing more, you know, evidence to say that it is this giant economic booster, which I mean, I hope I would be able to see, and you know, people who think differently could, you know, I'm not bigoted in my thoughts and ideology, so I'm open to learning and being informed. But as far as I know now, from the things that I've seen, I'm not 100% sold that is a situation where the cost would outweigh, you know, that we'd get a positive return on the investment there. Well, I would love to see us get more in sync, to answer your last question first. I was pretty familiar with a lot of things came through the UDC, and I wasn't real happy with it. And I think that a lot of the meetings that you guys actually had, where we learned a ton and heard a lot from the builders, and being in the construction business myself, I saw a lot of unnecessary regulations that didn't exactly jive with our community and the needs here. It felt almost like it was more like a copy and paste from the version in Chicago. And so I think that actually was the reason, excuse me, I think that was actually the reason for the high amount of so many amendments so soon, because they said, oh wow, you know, like huge blowback from the builders. I mean, you literally crippled the industry with what, I mean, as a philosophical libertarian, I would say it's almost unnecessary regulation. The pragmatic side of me would also say, let me understand, we have, you know, a certain amount of regulations to protect things like environment, people, you know, public safety. But when you begin to go too far past that with you know, excessive redundancy in your regulations, and things that seem that they're more about generating revenue than they really are about protecting, you know, public safety and public health, I would like to reduce many of those. But obviously I do, like I said at the beginning, I really would like to see the parish and the city be more unified on that, to also keep things simpler. We don't want to cripple the business. So if maybe we could find some happy medium in there, and try to keep things closer together, so it's a little bit easier to understand for, you know, new people who aren't from here, you know, other builders. Like we don't want to just, you know, accommodate the ones that are here, but we also want to make development and growth and people coming back to Shreveport, you know, also a viable option, something that they would consider. Well, I think just based on my body of work in the community and being involved and around local government, attending, you know, hundreds of meetings over, you know, my lifetime, especially over the last several years, that I've already developed relationships with current serving I even have, good relationships with some of the people that have already recently been elected due to not having an opponent, as well as, connections in the city and across the state, and state representatives from, political efforts of my past. I think I already have a good working relationship with a broad variety of a very diverse group of people. And I hope that I could utilize that in being able to work together better than we've seen in the past. And like I said, I think the parish is overall in pretty good shape. But I think you would go with the obvious I want to go to is infrastructure, and making sure that we're taking care of our infrastructure, not just building new stuff or anything, but actually taking care, making sure we have a long-term plan for the future to make sure we can maintain and keep, because our roads are in pretty decent shape as far as the parish roads, not so much inside of city limits, but making sure that we're maintaining and doing things properly in that aspect. You would have public safety is obviously a big one, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Doing the things that are necessary to, make sure we have the right amount of law enforcement, things like that, understanding of the law, and we got a good sheriff that's been taking care of that relatively well. Again, those issues kind of fall inside the city where we're falling short at. And then third would be economic development, and not necessarily in that order. It's just the order they came to my head. But we've got to do better at making Caddo Parish a business-friendly place, especially a small, local, business-friendly place. A place where, entrepreneurship is easier. There's not a lot of unnecessary hurdles. There's not a lot of, I go back to the redundancy and permits and fees and applications and processes and licenses and these things that make it non-conducive to new businesses starting up or wanting to come here. Or maybe things are easier just to do on Bossier, and they can, blow up on that side of the river and continue to move more taxpayers over to something that seems like it's newer and flashier and better. I'd like to ensure that we're doing everything necessary to maybe draw back a bit on the regulations and the size and scope of government in general to ensure that we kind of make a better situation for small businesses. That would be I think that's the key to our economic development. I've lived here my whole life. I grew up and I got kind of hooked into local government very early as a child when my dad ran for office, and when one of my neighbors, and worked on his campaign when I was in high school, and I got kind of caught up in it, and I drifted away thinking that getting into state and then federal politics was a better use of my time, and I realized it wasn't, because I don't have that kind of money or those kind of people, and the problems that I saw and I really wanted to fix were actually right here at home, which increased my involvement in the community, local organizations and nonprofits and things through my church. But most importantly, I was going to all these meetings. Most people would probably recognize my face and the beard from being on the front row of all these meetings, including the committee meetings and subcommittee meetings, and even the mayor's meetings, the really hard to find ones. The ones that just aren't really advertised very well. Like I hunt and find to be there so I can actually know what's going on and build the relationships with those people in position taken to make sure that, like, hey, I've helped to show people how to really build neighborhood associations and get together and get engaged and encourage them to come to the meetings and have their voice heard and be engaged in the civic process. So taking that and trying to push that into the meetings and making sure the elected officials that we have now and understand that there are people that care. They may not necessarily know, or maybe the time of the meetings aren't conducive to their schedules and things are difficult, but trying to be there, really trying to overachieve for the sake of my daughters. I want this to be a place that they stay. I want them to grow up and have a safe place. I want it to be like the Shreveport I remember as a child, which may not have been as rosy as I remember it, but that idea, I want them to have the same pride that I had in Shreveport, Caddo Parish growing up, and I want them to want to stay. So that's motivated me to just attend an absurd amount of meetings and put in a lot of hours. And I've been asked a lot of times, like, why do you do this? And that's why I do it. And I think that's prepared me, because you won't have a 4-year learning curve that we've just become so accustomed to with the people that we elect. It's popular people, big spenders, power players. And I'm a person that's truly dedicated to this community as a lifelong resident with a lot of relationships, a lot of bridges I've built over the years.
Okay.
Man, I don't know. That was so rapid fire. I think we nailed so much stuff in such a quick time. I think that's good.
Okay.